Buenas noches. Pastor Justin here. Just want to thank you guys so much again for tuning into this episode, the Justin Chronicles. And I'm just so excited for, again, I can't stress enough for this. This is like one of my bigger passions when it comes to the Bible, is talking about this kind of stuff that we're diving into right now, end times related things. So welcome back to what to do if millions of people have vanished, part 3. And so we've been really stressing on how we have this event, right, where millions of people either will or have disappeared, and depending on what side of it you're on, and what to do in response to that, right? Either way, live in light of the return of Jesus, of him coming back in the clouds, right? Whether you're in that first or second part, the first part, your blessed hope is that Jesus is coming back and we're going to be with him, and we're going to be able to not be here for the horrible things that are going to happen. But even if you are here on that side of it, there is hope that Jesus is physically coming back when he does come back, and he's coming back as a conqueror at the end of the 7-year tribulation period. And that no matter what happens, he is faithful, and he loves you, and he's on the throne. And so right now, this side of things, it's such an interesting time to be alive because there's so much conflict happening right now. You have the Israel-Hamas stuff going on as of right now, 2024. This is still a topic. You have things going on in Ukraine. You have things going on with Russia and all these other countries that are in the news that are all referenced in the Bible. You got Iran, Afghanistan, you got Egypt, you got Jordan, Saudi Arabia, like all of these countries in the Middle East that have this coalition going. Again, it's such an interesting time to be alive. And so really what I want to do is focus on what this term eschatology actually means first, right? So let's focus on this for a second. Matthew 24, 3-8 says this. This is in the New King James Version. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Right? And we talked about this the other week, the other episode, I should say, and that Jesus said many people are going to come claiming that they are the Christ. And we've seen that. We've seen that in recent history even. And the Antichrist himself will claim to be the Messiah. Jesus also says that there will be famines, pestilences, earthquakes in various places, kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation. All these things will be transpiring in the last days. So really, when you look at eschatology, right, it's just a study of the end times. And it's really... It's the reestablishment of Israel as a nation, right? God's not done with Israel yet, right? Like the church right now is the bride of Christ, but God is still in Israel's corner, even if they're not necessarily acting like the people of God, like they don't get a pass to do immoral things. They have some of the highest abortion rates in the world. They, the LGBTQ plus, the gay pride parades, like all these things. Again, if you struggle with that, this is not to shame someone, but again, in terms of standing up for biblical morals, the Jewish people should know better than to participate in some of these things if they hold true to even the Torah and the Talmud and some of the things that they might hold, not even the Old Testament as a whole, but even the first 5 books of the Bible. They should be in more regard to some of these things, but their hearts are hardened right now as a whole. We'll say Orthodox Judaism, their eyes, it's like they have scales on their eyes. They just don't see it yet, but they will one day. They will see that Jesus is their Messiah one day, and they will repent, and they will turn to him. So let's look at, and what's I think exciting right now is let's look at some modern prophecies. Right? Let's look at some modern prophecies that have happened. Right? And actually, I just want to look at something real quick because I have in my notes. I just want to make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself. So I actually want to focus on this first. I want to focus on Jesus for a second, right? So Jesus fulfilled a ton of prophecy. And I want to focus on those things first. And I'm looking for my notes right now real quick. Just bear with me on this. I apologize, because there are some stats that I want to give you, and maybe I just end up doing this in a different episode. So we could do that. Let's focus on some modern prophecy first, so that way I don't get bogged down with this. Maybe I'll do that in the next one. So let's look at some modern prophecy. We'll focus on that, and then we'll focus on some of the things that Jesus has actually done. So you can trust that Jesus is in fact actually coming back, right? Like you can bet on that. I really thought I had this in a different spot. So, all right, let's focus on that. Apologize. Let's keep going. So, Israel becoming a nation again. All right, this was huge, right? This was such a huge thing. Israel became a nation again on May 14th, 1948. And in biblical terms, the significance of Israel becoming a nation is often tied to the promises made in the Old Testament, particularly in relation to the covenant God established with Abraham and his descendants. So basically, God, when in judgment, God takes away the temple, they get exiled off, and they get dispersed, right? And you see this when Nebuchadnezzar overtakes Jerusalem, overtakes the area in the Old Testament, and the Jewish people get dispersed everywhere to the different corners of the earth of the known world at that time. And you see that there is a call that one day Israel would become a nation again. Israel wasn't its own nation when Jesus was around. Part of them hoping that he would be the Messiah is that they saw him as a conquering Messiah at that time. And he will be, it's just not that at that time. Jesus came the first time to establish his kingdom spiritually and to establish the church. And so they were like hoping and waiting for Jesus to come back and take out the Romans, and the Messiah was going to be a conqueror like David and do all these things. And Jesus will fulfill that. He just hasn't fulfilled it yet. And so they had this anticipation of becoming a nation again, and they weren't yet. And after 2,000 years, roughly, they became a nation again in one day, which was also Bible prophecy, that they would become a nation. And on May 14th, 1948, in one day, because of World War II, they became a nation again. Isaiah 43, 5-6 says, "Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will gather you, you and your children, from east and west, and I will say to the north and the south, bring my sons and daughters back to Israel from the distant corners of the earth." Right? Israel would become a nation again in one day. Isaiah 66, 8. "Who has ever seen anything as strange as this? Who ever heard of such a thing? Has a nation ever been born in a single day? Has a country ever come forth in a mere moment? But by the time Jerusalem's birth pains begin, her children will be born." Amos 9:14-15. "I will bring my exiled people of Israel back from distant lands, and they will rebuild their ruined cities and live in them again. They will plant vineyards and gardens. They will eat their crops and drink their wine. I will firmly plant them there in their own land. They will never again be uprooted from the land I have given them, says the Lord your God." Zechariah 12:3. "On that day I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock. All the nations will gather against it to try to move it, but they will only hurt themselves." Right? And what's so cool about that one in particular is you look at Israel becomes a nation again in 1948, and the Middle East hates it. And they have what's called the 6-Day War right after that, where a coalition of Islamic countries try to annihilate Israel, right? And that happened actually, what was that, in 68? It wasn't directly after 1948. I don't believe that date was that. So you have this 6-Day War, and I'm going to look this up just to make sure that I get this right. 1967. All right, so roughly 19 years later, you have the 6-Day War. So Israel's had some time to inherit the land. Mind you, the land was not glamorous. It wasn't like it is today where it's flourishing, really. It was desert land. It wasn't desirable. And from there on out, the Jews start coming back to Israel. And that's still happening today. And God said, I'm going to bring people back into this land and they will be a nation again. And this has never happened before in the history of the world, where you have a nation that gets attacked like the way they do and then end up becoming a nation again the way that they have, and then the way that it has become. So you have the 6-Day War. The 6-Day War has some really cool stories come out of it, right? This is a war that they should not have won. Right, and there are some crazy stories that happen from this, right? To soldiers being confused and essentially shooting at themselves, or you have rockets and missiles being fired that either didn't hit their target or just never exploded. Right, like God protected Israel during this time. They should not have won. Like they should not have won. They were outmanned, outgunned, and they should not have won. Right, and what's so cool about this is I want to read you some facts to this. So, recognizing the formidable threat, this is from charismanews.com. Recognizing the formidable threat posed by Egypt's superior air force, Israel's military leaders initiated Operation Focus, a daring and audacious preemptive strike. Their goal was to neutralize the enemy's planes while still on the ground. This operation proved to be one of the most successful air campaigns in military history, with Israel destroying 452 enemy planes while losing just 46 of their own. Right? And you have to understand this. They go and they take out all of these planes before these people can even attack. Right? And throughout the war, many instances of divine intervention were reported. Pilot and IDF Major General Ezer Wiseman attributed the lack of warning by the Egyptians to the finger of God. Old planes that had malfunctioned in the past operated flawlessly during the conflict, and unexploded enemy shells baffled the Israeli soldiers. Right? There was an unseen army. According to IsraelMyGlory.org, Israel's tank forces charged on for 4 days across the burning sands of Sinai to the Suez Canal, withdrew, and returned, all without needing any reinforcements. Foreign military experts were amazed at the miracle of a small army with partly obsolete weapons trouncing a mighty army with modern, sophisticated equipment. If they had not seen the battlefields with their own eyes, they would not have believed it. It was as if an unseen hand was helping them. Right? There were miraculous surrenders. Even more astonishing were the accounts of Arab soldiers surrendering without a fight. One Israeli infantry recruit encountered an Egyptian truck loaded with soldiers, but was met with surrender instead of aggression. The soldier recounted the Egyptian sergeant's paralyzed state, saying that his arms and body had become frozen. Such accounts demonstrated that the miraculous extended beyond Israel's military actions. It was just a profound testament. Those are just a few of the things, but I wanted to focus on that God's hand is still on Israel. And I've even seen documentaries of them being in battle and lights appearing, guiding troops to safe pathways while explosions and mortars and grenades are going off around them. You have other things in terms of Bible prophecy, right? And again, that's relating to Zechariah 12:3, saying that all the nations will gather against it and try to move it, but they will only hurt themselves, right? They're not going to exterminate the Jewish people as much as it gets threatened. Even in the end times, the Jewish people might be on the flee in Jordan, which we'll get there at some point in these episodes, but they will never get annihilated. God promises that. So let's look at another prophecy, right? One of them is that the Euphrates River is going to dry up. Revelation 16:12 says, "Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great Euphrates River, and it dried up so that the kings from the east could march their armies toward the west without hindrance." Right? And there are reports saying that by 2040, I believe, the Iraqi government actually has gone on record and has said that the Euphrates River will dry up by 2040. Right, Iraq could have no rivers by 2040. Reports warn that Iraq's, and this is from thenationalnews.com. And this article, when was this article done? Let me see. Not now. Come on. All right, get out of here. Don't want cookies. 2021. So this is an article 3 years old. And it says Iraq's Tigris and Euphrates rivers could run dry by 2040 because of declining water levels and climate change, a government report said on Thursday. The rate of decline in water imports to Iraq has begun gradually and will decrease to 30% by 2035. The country's water inflows during the summer are estimated to be about 40 billion cubic meters. A decrease in supply to 30% of normal levels will result in Iraq receiving 11 billion cubic meters annually. Right, and their water consumption needs amount to 53 billion cubic meters annually, which means the deficit will increase to 80%. This is important stuff. It says severe droughts will affect the country by 2025. Again, this was written 3 years ago. I'd have to look more into detail to see how that's playing out right now. But all that to say, for the fact that the Iraqi government has come out and said that these things could dry up relatively within the next 15 years of our lifetime is a big deal. That is Bible prophecy. Right? We have earthquakes, right? I remember reading an article on how since they've started recording earthquakes in the last 100 years, they have seen a gradual increase each year to the point where you compare between now and then, and there's so many more earthquakes occurring every single year now compared to when they first started studying earthquakes worldwide. And again, you attribute that to Jesus when he says, again, Matthew 24:6-7, you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world, and that's attributed to birth pains, right? And we talked about this already, but they're like birth pains, and we can know, and it's actually, you know that the baby's coming when you have the contractions, right? And that's what we can hope in. We can take that to light. Again, the common theme is live in light of his return, right? These birth pains, all these things that are happening, these Bible prophecies that we're seeing before our eyes take place that have just recently happened that are a big deal. And there's so many more that still need to be fulfilled in a sense, but in the same sense, nothing else needs to happen before Jesus comes back. And the act of millions of people disappearing, right? That could be at any moment. It means that we need to live in light of his return. We need to stay focused on what God's calling us to do, but it also means we can't just stay so focused on heaven. We are not doing what we need to do here on earth. As much as we long for that, and as amazing as it will be to be with the Lord, and it's hard. It doesn't mean it's not easy. Life is difficult, right? Right now we're experiencing huge inflation. It's hard to feed your family. It's hard to get groceries. It's hard to do all these things in American culture right here and now. But we can know that Jesus is on the throne. Stay focused on what he's asking you to do so you can stand before him and he can say, well done, my good and faithful servant. So I hope that encouraged you guys. Stay tuned. We got tons more of these things going on. You can see I'm still wearing my same jacket. I'm pumping these out right now because I'm just passionate about it. And I want to do this while it's fresh. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Have such a good week.